tie an Andy Pullian's meat fly, also known as a chartreuse antron budded peacock silver Hilton.
Nice.
Hey guys. I've tied in my thread, I started up by the eye. I'm at the point of the hook, I'm going to tie in some antron yarn. I'm going to go back about halfway between the point and the barb. I'm going to make a nice little loop here. Doesn't matter how big it is, as long as it's longer than the gap of the hook. I'm going to tie the butt down. I'm going to go back again to that halfway point. Good night, guys.
Thank you.
I'm going to make, you're welcome. I'm going to make 2 wraps underneath. Bring the thread back forward, trim off the butts. Okay, now I want a piece of ribbing. This is Largaton oval tinsel, silver, medium size. I'm going to tie it in underneath the hook shank. Right back to the edge of the tail. Then I'm going to take some peacock. Okay, this is the main thing I want you to get from me tying this fly. Anybody ever use these feathers for peacock?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, because,
You can find them.
well, number one, you can use the whole feather, even the stem pieces. The eye you can use for dry, really nice fine dry flies like the quill Gordon. The larger fibers up here I'm going to use to tie the steelhead fly with, because the barbules on each side of this are real wide. As you go down the feather, they get smaller and smaller and smaller. So if I'm going to tie a size 22 midge, I'm going to use these really little guys down here. If I'm going to tie large steelhead flies, I'm using one up here. Same thing as before. When the eye is facing you, the pretty part of the eye. If I'm a left-handed tyer, I'm going to use the right side. If I'm a right-handed tyer, I'm going to use the left side. The reason being, again, the stem is the same as on ostrich herl. You want the stem facing forward, and you want those longer sections, the barbules on the piece of herl, facing up going forward. Okay? Now, you can do one at a time, 2 at a time. Go way up here and get the really pretty ones. Okay? And just like we said before, I'm going to take these feathers, fibers, herls, and I'm going to line it up so that the stem is all on one side. And if I put these together properly, line them up, and then do this with them, if they're all the right direction, they'll line up. This didn't line up because one is in the wrong direction. So I'm going to, I'm just going to put these together and boom, they're lined up. Right now the stem is facing forward. So I can grab these, put them underneath the hook shank like so, with the stem facing forward, and real quick make a wrap. Just tie those butts down and move the thread forward to about 1/3 of the way up the tang and stop. Now, these should all be lined up right now, and I can wrap 3 at once and make these really great large bodies. You will note as I get further up here, it's tapering again, right? That's because I've gotten into the smaller part of the shorter fibers on the herl itself. I'm going to tie it off on the bottom of the hook shank. A couple of turns. Trim it off. My tail. It's kind of straight out, and when I have steelhead flies, I like the tail elevated a little bit. Remember we tied the tinsel underneath the hook shank? Well, it's underneath, it's kind of a little bit on the other side of the hook away from me right now. So I can take this loop, hold it with my scissors, grab the loop, and cut it so it's exactly the distance of the hook gape, or gap. Right? If I want a little elevation, I can take my tinsel right underneath that, real tight, and I can counterwind this through the peacock. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 turns to get to the front, and I'm going to make one more turn, a second turn, and this, after the second turn, I'm going to go backwards and tie it off in between the two I just did. Now the reason I did that is I want to make sure that's locked in and that's not going to become unraveled. Okay? At this point, I'm in between two pieces of tinsel, which is a great tie-in spot for my wing. I'm going to take two hackles. Now there's another one in here that's really wide. That's going to be my collar. Okay? These are going to be my wing, and I'm going to put them together. I'm going to hold the tips together, and I'm going to line them by moving this thumb and finger back and forth until they're perfectly aligned. I'm going to figure out how long I want this wing to be. I want the tips to be about halfway down the tail. Okay? Well, where does that end up? Well, there's a black bar right about here. So if I hold the wings together and pull on that little black bar to separate the fibers, and hold it up and check it. If I tied it in, it's going to be a little long there, so a few more. About right. I can hold this on top. I can do a duck quill pinch. You guys have heard that before, right?
What do you call it?
Duck quill pinch. I'm going to pull up. I'm going to make one more wind. I'm going to take a look. If it's not right on top, you can then, at that point, lift it up, kind of move it around to where you want it. Well, I want these to be splayed a little bit. If I like where they are, I like how they're situated, I'm going to tie those butts down something fierce. Multiple wraps, and then trim off the butts. You never trim it off with only a couple of wraps on because you're going to move those stem fibers around. Oh, and it moved on me. Yeah.
Oh, wrong thing.
Oh, sorry.
Too busy in the back. Take the wall down.
Show you how you want them. Here we go again, doubling feathers. When you get used to doubling feathers, you can grab it between your little finger and your ring finger on your non-tying hand, your material hand. You can hold the tip with your tying hand and do the same thing you do with the hackle pliers. Just fold it down. Okay, the last piece. Fold it down and back. Trim your little angle in. Hold it at a 45 to the hook shank. Right at a 45-degree angle. I'm actually holding the fibers straight back right now. And I'm going to tie that in to several wraps and bring the thread up to where I'm going to tie it off and stop. You can see when I hold it up, if it's right, it's all going backwards. 1, 2. Each time I'm just pulling the fibers back. 3, 4, 5, 6. I can do this light or I can do this heavy. I'm going to do this one really heavy. 7, 8. What were you saying about a real thin head there, Bill? 9. I'm going to tie it off on the bottom. 1, 2. Trim the butt. If there's anything there right now that I don't like, it's the time to take it off. That looks pretty good. Let's just do a few little wraps. Six. Now remember what I'm using. I'm using 8/0 thread on this one. 3-turn whip finish. We'll dab a head cement, and I'm done.